Baba was a palm wine tapper, and everyone in the village knew that his business brought money. Even though he drank almost half of the palm wine he tapped, there was always enough left to sell on most days. His pockets were full, and people often wondered how he still managed to save despite his drinking. But his house never felt that money. Not a single coin ever found its way to where it truly mattered. Not to the kitchen, not to the school, not to the woman who was growing heavy with their third child and still waking up before sunrise every morning to keep everything from falling apart. If this story is already speaking to you, like this video, drop a comment below and subscribe to Mr. Folktales right now, so you never miss a story like this one. Now let us continue. Baba's wife was named Yadami. That pregnancy pressed down on her body, like a weight she could not put down. Her back ached without stopping. Her vision blurred before noon on some days. Yet, she never rested. Every morning she swept, fetched water, cooked. Their eldest daughter Adon was 10 years old, quiet, watchful, the kind of child who understood everything she saw but said very little about it. Their second daughter, Dami, was 6, warm, lively, and permanently attached to her sister. Wherever Adon went, Dami followed. They shared food, whispered secrets, and told each other their dreams. Together, they were Yadami's whole world. And Yadami carried that world completely alone. Baba spent his days tapping palm wine and his evenings drinking it with friends near the village square. By the time he remembered a family was waiting, the sun had already set. One morning, Yadami sent the girls to school as usual. By afternoon, they were back far too early, their faces heavy with something they had not yet said out loud. "They sent us home," Dami said quietly. "School fees." Yadami sat down slowly. She had been quietly saving every spare coin for weeks, not for fees, but for hospital bills. The nurse had warned her, this pregnancy had risks. If something went wrong, she would need money fast. She had not told anyone. She carried that fear the way she carried everything else, alone. "Go and find your father," she told the girls. "Maybe he will help." When they arrived at Baba's store, he was counting bundles of money at his table. The moment he saw them coming, he swept it all into a sack before they could reach the door. "School sent us home," Adon said carefully. "For fees. Go and meet your mother," he said. Adon had seen the sack. She said nothing. She took Dami's hand and they walked home in silence. When they arrived, the compound was too quiet. Inside the small room, a basket of corn had tipped and scattered across the floor. The smell of something that had been boiling still hung in the air. And there, near the wall, was their mother. Adon called her name. Her voice was already shaking. "Nothing." False day now was dashing. Dami ran forward. Yadami lay completely still. Her wrapper was soaked. Adon knelt and touched her mother's hand. It was cold. She screamed. Neighbors poured in. One older woman knelt beside Yadami and placed a hand carefully on her stomach. Then she slowly shook her head. Later, the women pieced together what had happened. Yadami had gone out that morning to sell corn, even with her heavy belly because she needed money for the hospital. Her water broke without warning. She dragged herself home, hoping someone would be there. There was no one, no money nearby, no transport, no one who heard her cries. She struggled alone and she died alone. Someone ran to find Baba. He came quickly. He stood in the doorway and looked at his wife on the floor. "She is dead?" he asked. "Yes," an elder replied. He sighed, rubbed his face. "This life," he muttered. "It is hard." That was all. No tears, no cry. The next morning he woke up, tied his wrapper, picked up his tapping tools, and left. By afternoon he was at his drinking spot, His friends were already laughing. If you are still watching at this point, drop a comment right now with the words, "I am still here." Let us see who is truly following this story, because it is only going to get deeper from here. Days passed. Weeks. Baba's routine never changed. Adon took over the house. She was 10 years old and she became the woman of it. She cooked, fetched water, washed clothes, watched over Dami. School became something from another life. Hunger became ordinary. Some nights, long after the girls were asleep, Baba sat alone in the main room and counted his money in the low light. 1 million naira, some nights, 500,000 on others. He smiled to himself while he counted. In the next room, his daughters lay awake because their stomachs hurt too much for sleep. One afternoon, the hunger became unbearable. They searched every corner of the house, every pot, every cupboard, every bag. Nothing. Then Adom noticed a wooden box pushed far under their father's bed. She pulled it out and lifted the lid. Inside were bundles of money. Dami began to cry. Why would Papa do this? Why would he let us be hungry? We are right here. Adom closed the lid and pushed the box carefully back. She stood up. Let us go and find Miss Rachel, she said. Miss Rachel was their school teacher. Gentle, attentive, the kind of woman who noticed what others walked past. When she opened her door and found the two thin, exhausted girls outside, she pulled them in. They told her everything, the hunger, the counting in the dark, the box they had found and never touched. You found all of that and you did not take it, she asked slowly. Adon shook her head. Miss Rachel pulled them close. You are stronger than you know. She told them they could stay. The relief on their faces was immediate and complete. Miss Rachel understood exactly where Baba's weakness lived. Money made him feel powerful, and the admiration of a woman made him feel invincible. So every evening she walked past his store. Greetings became conversations. Conversations became long evenings. Before many weeks had passed, he was giving her money regularly. Miss Rachel accepted it all calmly. When he finally said, I want to marry you, she was ready. I will think about it, she replied. A few days later, she sat across from him with her hands folded and her face serious. Before anything moves forward, she said, you must know who I am. I am Miss Rachel. I am the teacher who has been feeding your daughter. The smile left his face. They have lived in my house since they left yours. I fed them when they were hungry. I held them when they cried for their mother. I watched them go without while you counted money in the dark. Baba shifted, but he did not leave. If you want to marry more, she continued, you will take full responsibility for those girls. Food, school, everything. That is my only condition. He thought about it. He thought about losing her. He nodded. Miss Rachel rose slowly. Every man has a weak point, she said quietly. And I have found you. Baba married Miss Rachel. He changed in ways the village could not fully explain. He came home before dark. He paid school fees without being asked. When Adon fell sick, he carried her to the clinic himself. For the first time in their lives, the girls did not go to bed hungry. Years passed in that peace. Adon grew into a composed, quietly powerful young woman. Dami became bold and outspoken. By the time they were 20, no one in the village remembered the hungry girls who used to knock on strangers' doors. But Miss Rachel had never had a child of her own. The village whispered about it. She heard everything and smiled through all of it. At night, alone, she placed her hand on her stomach and poured every drop of that unspoken love into Adon and Dami instead. These are my children, she told herself. This is enough. Then the town crier's voice rang out across the market square. The prince would choose a wife that day from among the village's young women. The news hit every household differently. Dami laughed and clapped. One of us could become a princess. Adon smiled, but her heart was already moving fast. She had quietly admired the prince since childhood. She had never told anyone. Dami noticed. You love him more than I ever have, she said simply. If he chooses you, I will be the happiest one standing in that crowd. Adon held her tightly and could not find words. But while joy moved between the sisters, something dark was moving through Miss Rachel. She had raised these women, shipped them, sacrificed years for them. And yet, at the very bottom of it, they were not truly hers. If one of them became a princess and moved away, what would be left? The fear whispered things that were not true, but felt entirely real. She began to change. Warmth became sharpness. Kindness became cold. She called Dami into her room one afternoon and asked if she liked the prince. Yes, Dami said honestly, but not the way Adon does. I want it to be her. Why should you always step aside? Miss Rachel said, her voice hard in a way Dami had never heard. From that day, quiet words were planted between the sisters. Dami began to feel anger she could not name, pulled between love and confusion by the one person she trusted most. The day of the contest, the whole village gathered. Drums beat continuously. The prince watched from his elevated seat as women stepped forward, one by one, to dance. When it was almost Adon's turn, Dami walked out of the crowd. Gasps. Whispers, she is going to ruin her sister. But Dami did not walk toward Adon. She walked toward Miss Rachel. And she knelt. The drums stopped. The crowd went completely silent. I want to thank you, Dami said, her voice beginning to tremble. You loved us when no one else would. You fed us. You held us in the dark. You were our mother when we had no mother left. Miss Rachel's chest tightened. But I need to ask you what changed. We never stopped loving you. We never planned to leave you behind. So why did you start hating us? Then Adon stepped forward and knelt beside her sister. You raised us when we had nothing. We will never leave you behind. You are our mother. No matter what happens today, that will never change. Miss Rachel's legs gave way. She sank to the ground and sobbed openly. In front of the prince, the elders, the entire village. Forgive me, she cried. I let fear into my heart and fed it until it looked real. I was so terrified of losing you that I nearly destroyed the only family I have ever truly had. She pulled them both into her arms and held on. Women in the crowd wept. Men shook their heads slowly. A voice from somewhere in the back traveled forward like a current. This is love. Another replied, and this is forgiveness. The drums began again, softer, setted, fuller. Adon rose her face and stepped forward. She danced, not to perform, but to tell the truth. Every step carried something real, the memory of her mother on that floor, the long, hungry nights, the morning Miss Rachel first said, "You can stay." The crowd felt it, without being able to name it. When she finished, the prince stood up and walked toward her. I choose you, he said. The village erupted. Dami held her sister and laughed and cried at once. Miss Rachel stood slowly, tears still on her face, a clean and genuine smile spreading across it. Even Baba, at the edge of the crowd, allowed himself a rare and quiet thing, a slow smile. Peace had returned, and love tested, broken, and repaired, had won. Yadami carried that family on her back until it killed her. She deserved so much better. Women Oniri do not have to stay where there is no love. A man who truly loves you will show it through his actions, his presence, and his efforts, not just his words. Love always shows itself through care. Never beg for love. Never remain where you are not valued. And never forget, forgiveness is stronger than every wound that comes before it. If this story moved you, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Mr. Folktales for more stories that speak straight. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time, stay strong, stay rooted in your worth, and never settle for a love that does not choose you back.